Truth Connections.
What's real, what's deception, what should we pay attention to? What is it that's driving us insane?
Truth Connections.
Something happening here.
Truth Connections.
You're listening to this.
Good evening. This is Catherine Buckaloo, and you are listening to Truth Connections Radio. To check out our upcoming show schedule, find books from our past guests, listen to archives, or watch free documentaries, please visit truthconnections.wordpress.com. There is a tab on that site on the top right-hand corner that allows you to sign up for either our YouTube channel or our Facebook page. When someone thinks it's okay to play God or to take away a person's free will, I have a problem with that. I have an even bigger problem when children are tortured, abused, physically or sexually. The trafficking of children has been going on for quite some time. In 2010, the movie Oranges and Sunshine, based on a true story by Margaret Humphreys, a social worker in Nottingham, uncovered the scandal of the home children, where thousands of orphan children were deported on a ship like cargo to Australia, promised oranges and sunshine, but instead got a life of hard labor as slaves. Some were even put in institutions and said to have medical experiments practiced on them. In the end, as adults, some of them were reunited with family and realized they weren't orphaned at all. They were stolen from temporary foster care, never to be seen again, and taken away from their regular parents. Thousands of Indigenous Canadian children were sent to live in residential schools. Then later they went missing and mass graves were found, and some of the children who survived told their truth about being physically and sexually abused. Boys Town, also known as the Franklin Cover-Up, was actually a front for child trafficking, prostitution, and pedophilia. Operation Peter Pan was another Catholic scandal out of Cuba. In 1960 to 1962, more than 14,000 kids were abducted and removed from the island under the pretense of saving them from poverty, only later to be trafficked or illegally adopted. Hitler had a virtual baby factory. In effort to preserve the master race, as he called it, women were encouraged to breed with as many men as they could, and after the war, those children produced in that program were never seen from again. Hitler was also heavy into the occult and magic, looking to create a superhuman. Some say these experiments started here in the United States, then were continued in Nazi Germany, then after the war brought back here under the guise of Project Paperclip to further the experiments. I would like to personally dedicate this show to a fallen victim who died recently under suspicious circumstances, and who was also a victim of these MK Ultra experiments, torture, and abuse. Wherever you are, Chris Neal, also known as Clandestine Rage, we love you. Tonight's guest is Michael Prince, also known as James Casbolt, and he is a survivor also. Michael had an extraordinary, multidimensional, diverse life. He comes from an aristocratic bloodline that naturally allows him to see and feel more than the average individual. He was born in 1976 and was chosen before birth to be in a program called Project Mannequin. This program is one of the most secret classified projects, and participants are used because of their genetic abilities and were subject to horrific experiments both mentally and physically and sexually since birth. Michael's here tonight to discuss his involvement in IBIS and other shadow government operations, MyLabs, abductions, missing time, implants, mind control, race, space, and consciousness wars, transhumanism, AI, also known as artificial intelligence, and holographic programming. We will also go into detail about cloning, hybridization, kidnapping, shock therapy, and murder. I could go on, but without any further delay, please help me welcome Michael Prince to the show. Welcome, Michael. How are you?
I'm good, Catherine.
We're happy you're here with us this evening.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Thank you. Would you mind starting off with the history of the truth as you know it, since birth, basically?
Okay.
I know that's a big can of worms. Sorry.
I was raised for the first 4 years of my life, officially from 1976 to 1979 at a facility in British Columbia in Canada, and a facility known as the Q552 underground base, and that's actually under the small town of Nelson. And I had my memory completely erased in 2003. I was put in a tiny little fishing village in a place called St. Ives in England, and the plan was to kind of bury me there. I didn't have any access to anything, any resources or any money. The plan was to just bury me there and hope I wouldn't remember, and I'd had a good 20 years of my life erased.
When you say bury you, can you explain what you mean by that?
Well, just keep me in the middle of nowhere in this tiny little fishing village with no money, no access to any contacts, resources or travel.
I see.
And like I said, I'd had a good 20 years of my memory erased. Certain operations that took place from 1990 to the year 2000, it was a 10-year military campaign, and then another one in the 2000s. And like I say, I was put in here, and I couldn't, I was kind of lobotomized in a way. And I haven't got any notes. I'm just going to talk about my life.
Go right ahead.
But I think we'll need the whole 3 hours to even scratch the surface, Catherine.
I believe so too. Do you know how it came to pass that you were adopted? Can you start there?
Okay, I was put in the facility in 1976 in Canada.
Right.
As a baby. And the underground facility was actually run by an AI system, a computer, which it could be called a female computer in some ways. It was known as the Black Queen. And the Queen Mother of the royal family was the living representative of this AI system, this Black Queen system. And I was part of 42 children that were in this base, 42 babies.
Yes.
And there were hundreds of babies in the facility. But my group was 42 of the same genetics. Basically.
Do you know what the other babies were used for?
We were being, we were communicating back and forth with the AI system as babies, the Black Queen. There was a symbiotic link between us, because the AI system was acting as a surrogate mother for us. So what I mean by that was, it was kind of a factory in some ways, and the AI system was learning about our biology, so we could be given cybernetics and survive the process. We went through a lot of operations to different parts of our bodies. So the AI system, the Black Queen, was acting as a surrogate mother. So to give you an example of that,
like the Resident Evil movie?
Yeah, kind of like that, but I'm not sure if that...
I did watch part of that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if in the movie it was, she was acting as the AI system was acting as a surrogate mother, because I didn't see any babies in that, but it was kind of a similar concept. The AI system was controlling the facility in that movie.
And I'm going to take a moment and put a photo in the chat box from a time that you thought that was. We'll make sure to put those photos underneath the verbiage and the YouTube links too, so people listening after today can also check that out. Why don't we start with describing those photos?
Well, okay, at the facility, it was kind of like a factory in a way, and the AI system, we were learning from each other. It was acting as a surrogate mother, so there was like a line of kind of pumps that this female AI system would give us milk on the pumps, kind of nurse us. Well, there was hundreds of babies there, but my group of 42, we were separated into one group of 42. And as we were nursing on the pumps, the system would be learning about our biology and changing the antibodies in the milk to what we needed. So we were communicating back and forth with each other.
So you were monitored on a molecular biological level, 24/7?
Yeah, and we were under armed guard 24/7 there. But we were sometimes we were kept in the aircraft hangars above ground where it was really cold as babies, and they leave the doors open to be exposed to the elements there. And kind of after the after a certain amount of cybernetics were put into us, I mean, we kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, transcended the human condition in some ways, where we stopped crying in the end and things like that.
You're basically fractured in many ways.
Yeah, basically. And we were put in these little pens, actually quite large pens. It was like a walled off area, and that's what the photo is. And there different animals were put in with us at different times, like wolves and tigers, but it would be one animal at one time. And as babies, we had the ability to defend ourselves still. I'm not sure exactly how that worked.
Similar to the way the Spartans used to do it, right?
Yeah, it's similar to that. It was like a cybernetic version of what the Spartans did.
The strong will rise to the top.
And so different animals will be put in the pen with us, and that's actually one of the pens, a picture of the pen, with the walled-off area. And there's actually towers in the picture where the Black Queen, its surveillance, and the mechanical machine gun turrets are in there too. But that's actually a simulated environment. It's an underground dome where you have the pens in it, but there's a holographic display on the roof. It can display nighttime, or it can display if you're outside in the day. But you're actually underground in the dome, and there's weather machines there that can make it kind of rain or snow and things like that.
Right.
So they were simulating different environments and exposing us to different animals, because they created a all-terrain soldier with different animal abilities, like Arctic warfare, jungle warfare, and things like that. So they were conditioning and training us in the simulated environments underground in these domes.
Were you considered to be in the military at that time, as a baby?
This was run by the NSA and MI6.
Right.
So I think officially we belonged to the NSA at the time.
Okay.
And I mean, George Bush Sr. was there a lot of the time, and the Queen Mother, like I say, she was a living representative of the Black Queen AI program. I think actually Arizona Wilder has mentioned the Black Queen program with the Queen Mother. But I think George Bush Sr.'s DNA was somehow infused into the 42 babies. I'm not exactly sure how that worked. His DNA was infused to create a lot of the flesh for the 42 babies. So we're all closely related to him.
He goes back to the Rothschilds, doesn't he?
I think there's connections with the Rothschilds, with all of us. There seems to be that keeps coming up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even lately in the last couple of years, there's been an internal war between the Rothschild factions, which I was involved in.
So that was, when did you have those memories as a child? Did you remember those and then get those wiped and get those memories back, or did you remember that even as a child?
Well, I grew up in the base for the first 4 years. More and more is coming back to me of what went on there. There was a rescue in 1979 by American Special Forces, and we were the 42 of us were being transferred to Dulce, but above ground in SUVs through the Rocky Mountains. And there was a rescue operation. We were intercepted by a Special Forces unit, and then we were taken to Toronto.
Let me have you stop there for a moment. Why do you think, if this was an NSA operation, would Special Forces come and rescue you? Was there internal warring going on and controversy about the experiments that were being taken out?
There was two factions against each other, which is to the present day in some ways. And it's kind of a Zionist Jewish faction, and then there's more of an Odinist Nazi faction. So they were warring against each other. Which they had been warring against each other for a long time, since the Russian Revolution in the early 1900s. And then obviously in World War II, they were against each other. So it's continued to the present day. But the thing was, we were rescued by this team and then taken to Toronto, and we were farmed out to adopted families. But then, I don't even know if you can call it a rescue, because I was adopted into a incest and ritual murder family in England.
Very sad.
So, in a place called Reading, a place called Tilehurst in Reading. And, I mean, my adopted mother She was with a partner at the time who was a director of an aluminium company in Newbury, and there was child pornography and snuff movies, and there was all this kind of stuff. And the minute I arrived at the house in Tilehurst, and there's been actually a CID, police intelligence investigation into the sexual abuse in Tilehurst, by the British police, but I never talked about the murders to the police with the children. I just talked about the sexual abuse. But then I've just talked about this, really, for the first time last night. And then some information was exchanged back and forth, and somebody's reported it to the police again to add to the investigation report. But I'm not exactly sure how much good that's going to do. It's just, I think it's good to get the information out there. And basically what the information is, I'm kind of beating around the bush what the information is. I was taken to the house, and I lost my virginity to my adopted mother through the incest side of things. And I was only like 11 or 12 at the time. And that was filmed by her partner. And then two kind of well-dressed men came to pick up the videotape. And so there was this kind of child pornography trade going on, and there's a lot of money in these kind of mother-son videos that a lot of people want, and so I mean that was going on.
Let me ask you this, Michael: is your adopted mother still alive?
Yes.
Is your natural mother still alive?
I don't know. I'm not exactly sure who she is.
Okay. How did you find out what your maiden name, if you will, was?
That's kind of complicated. I mean, it goes back to even before 1976.
Right.
I'd probably rather not get into that too much now, just kind of explain what happened when I was put in the house at Tilehurst in Reading.
One other question before you go further. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you said in one of your basis interviews that about 15 children made it out of there alive. Does that mean that some of those children passed away?
Some of them were shot during the rescue in the Rocky Mountains.
And you're not sure what happened to the rest?
I'm not sure. I know I'm friends with one of them, but I'm friends with one of them, but he works at Dulce. He's high level, works at the CIA and NSA too. But he's in denial about a lot of the stuff.
Right. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Please continue.
That's fine. But he's in denial about a lot of the stuff. Everyone has gone through all the kind of ritual abuse side of things. And, I mean, I wouldn't even call it Satanism, really, because there's a lot of good people in Satanism. Satanism's kind of very misunderstood. I mean, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Fred West case, the serial killer in Bristol. I mean, it happened a few years ago. He was like in an incest family and he had loads of kids, and he would like kill them and he buried them in under the patio in his back garden. And then the police kind of dug it up and they found the bones and things. It was a really famous case in England. But the point is that there's a really big connection with serial killings, and they create serial killers.
Someone in the chat room just said Fred and Rose West.
That's right, yeah, Fred and Rose West. They create serial killers in this, and I mean, I've got over 200 unconfirmed kills on my records for, intelligence and military operations. But I can do this with no remorse, really. I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg in a way. Because what was interesting is when I was in the Army, the US Army in 2012, I was stationed at Fort Sam Houston. And I was doing a 68 whiskey medic course where you learn all about the body and how it works. But Jeffrey Dahmer was stationed at Fort Sam Houston and did the 68 whiskey course too. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
Yes, I am.
So he was trained by the government, and then he was released into the civilian world, and that's where he learned to do other things like drill holes in people's heads and inject their brains with different chemicals, and that. It was like creating zombies.
Right.
And there's connections again the IBIS program with myself and Jeffrey Dahmer. Even he's still alive.
Is he?
Yeah, he is. Still alive. A lot of these people are. A lot of these serial killers.
Is that because there's clones of them?
No, he just never died. Maybe officially he was supposed to be murdered in prison.
Right.
But maybe they had a clone or a look-alike for the body, but no, he's still alive. And he went through all the same things as myself as a child. Like, collecting the dead animal skulls and things. Because the case, even going back to the Fred West and Rose West case, this house in Tylehurst, there was children brought there. I remember the first time was 3 young blonde girls, about 8. And all the movies were always done in like the spare middle room. And this, it wasn't always my adopted mother and her partner, but it was kind of, they were always there doing it, but there was always somebody else, like a handler with them. And these girls were brought in, and they had their mouths taped, and they were murdered in the spare room of the house.
It sounds like Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah, well, they had their throats cut and decapitated, and they collect the body parts. They're like hands and feet are highly sought after in the ritual killings. But they buried the remains out in the back garden. And I remember in my bedroom for about 3 nights after this, there were my mother's partner and some guys, about 3 guys, were outside digging up the patio for about 3 nights with lights and torches and smoking and talking, keeping me awake. And there's a lot of bodies in that back garden. Certain people in the intelligence community and the police know the address where it is, and they're still there. And the ownership of the house kept changing hands. It was my adopted mother and her partner sold the house to my adopted father, the guy that my mother was married to before the partner she was with. He was there with his current wife. They were involved in some kind of wife swapping thing. My adopted father and his new wife moved into the house, and he knocked the back shed. There was 2 sheds. There was like a big shed behind the back door and then a smaller shed. And they would keep children's skulls just in the shed laying around. As a child, I would go in and play with the skulls. And I would take the teeth out of the skulls and I'd keep them as souvenirs and keep them in my bedroom. Similar to what Jeffrey Dahmer did as a child. When my father moved into the house, this was like early 2000, he knocked the 2 sheds down and built this huge metal area in the back garden, which was like a huge metal shed. And then inside that he grew like copious amounts of cannabis because he was involved in the drugs trade. So the bodies were buried now underneath this huge metal shed that was put there. There was a lot of bodies piled up in there over the years. I was told that my adopted father died in Doncaster prison in 2003. And it was all, because my family always lied to me, I can't get any truth out of them. It's always difficult to know exactly what's going on because they try and confuse me. But this is what I was told, that he was involved with MI6 in drug trafficking internationally. He'd got addicted to heroin again at the time, and he needed a certain amount of money to fund the drug trafficking operation. So he approached the neighbours next door in Tylehurst, and the neighbours on either side were always involved in this, to keep an eye out on things. And he said to them, he'll give them the deeds to the house, the ownership of the house, but he just needs them to give him £30,000 to fund this operation. So apparently he gave them the deeds to the house. They basically got like a £250,000 house for like £30,000 because he needed the money at the time. And then he was arranging the operation, and he just before he could implement the operation, he was arrested by the police for possession of false passports, this is what I was told. And he ended up serving 6 months in Doncaster prison.
How old were you when this happened?
How old was I? This was 2003.
Okay.
So I'm 36 now. And then the next thing I know, I'm told that he's died of liver failure in the prison. So my mother told me that she went to the house. His wife at the time just disappeared. And then some people thought she went to Indonesia and died in that tsunami or whatever it was that was there at the time. But I don't think that's the case. I think she's still around. But anyway, my mother went back to the house and went to the next door neighbour's house and said, we knocked on the door, and she said she was met by a pregnant woman, and the pregnant woman said, my husband's not here. And she questioned the woman about, who owns the deed to the house now. And the woman was really vague about it. She didn't seem to know what was going on. My mother says she just left it, so they're not sure who owns the house. But then all the bodies are still there, of numerous children.
Now, were you in the military before they reactivated the IBIS program?
They reactivated the IBIS program just before I went into the military.
Okay.
And then the NSA files said that they were going to seed foreign agents into foreign militaries. Then I came over from England and went into the U.S. Army.
Do you have you have one of those military records on file?
Yeah, I did basic training at Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri.
Okay.
I trained with Echo 210, which is apparently the hardest infantry unit to graduate from. There's a saying that if you can make it through Echo 210, you can make it through anything in life.
Wow. And
it was hard. I did 9 weeks there, and then I was sent to Fort Sam Houston after that for medic training. That's the Joint Base San Antonio. It's the biggest military base in the country. It's got Randolph Air Force Base, Lackland Air Force Base, and Fort Sam. I was involved in a lot of operations there with all three branches, Navy, Air Force, and Army.
You're also with a remote viewing group too, weren't you?
Not at Fort Sam. The remote viewing stuff was done in the early years. They're not really that interested in the remote viewing anymore.
Because they have so much technology?
Because everyone's so hooked up with the cybernetics, they just hook you up to satellite and can physically see it through a screen now. They're not that interested in remote viewing anymore.
Yeah, we just had Andrew Bashago on, and he broke down all the different types of technology that he's familiar with as far as that goes. Looking glass type stuff.
Well, even before I even before I officially enlisted, I was involved in an entry-level training program with the U.S. Army called the Future Soldier Program. Interestingly enough, kind of play on words. I was a man from Denver came down to do my security clearances and said he was working for the Keypoint Corporation. Give me the paperwork. And that actually used to be known as the Kroll Corporation, which is K-R-O-L-L. And if you look into that, it's just basically like an NSA, CIA assassination squad. They hire a lot of British mercenaries, British like Scotland Yard, and British Special Forces and things. I was involved in assassination campaigns with them even before, like 3 months before I entered the army. And because officially they were just doing my security paperwork checks for the army. And then I was sent to New York on private jets, given police uniforms, and I was involved in an assassination campaign against the Rothschild family in New York and London.
Was that successful?
Leopold Rothschild turned up dead in the papers during the operation.
Gotcha.
They said that he died of asbestos poisoning from when he was in the Navy. And Nathaniel Rothschild was sent to his apartment in Upper West Side. And he ended up dead. But then he's in the news still. So I think there's a clone walking around to him. But you have to decapitate them.
Why is that?
Oh, it's the only way to kill them.
So they can't regenerate themselves?
Yeah. This connects again with all like the Jeffrey Dahmer stuff, and now he's collecting heads. You have to know what you're doing with the body.
What do you think was going on with those twins, those Swedish twins that were suspected super soldiers that ran in traffic and were hit by a bunch of cars and still survived after that? I heard one passed away since and one's in jail, maybe?
Well, from my understanding, they create two clones, and one might have a more advanced metal than the other. You know, they create two cyborgs, so they've got alloy exoskeletons. But they want to test the strength of the different metals and see which one's superior for combat situations. So one of the sisters ran out, was hit by a car, but didn't break any bones. And then the other one ran out, was hit, but broke her leg. So they're testing the alloy exoskeletons of the cyborgs there.
I have a theory. I don't know if it's true or not, but it seems to me like they're enhanced some way that the adrenaline pumps more than regular people. That's just a vibe that I get about it, because I don't know how many circumstances those two women were in where they should have been dead, and they just kept on getting up swinging, basically, you know, and walking away.
It's a bit more than just standard adrenaline, because they're not human, they're transhuman cyborgs, but a lot of the cybernetics are connected up with the hormones. So when the hormones activate, there might be a kind of an alloy mesh underneath the skin which will activate. It's nanotechnology that would create bulletproof skin, things like that, but only when the adrenaline kicks in, the fight or flight. There was an interesting book by a scientist called The Engines of Creation about nanotechnology. I forget the name of the scientist, but it talks about similar things. And there was, just before I left Fort Sam, somebody pinned up a poster, like a sheet of paper outside my door from my barracks, and it said that there was a Japanese and either British or American scientist who'd created a super thin material that stops bullets, you know, a super nano layer, but extremely thin, thinner than paper. So this is what they're weaving underneath the skin now of the enhanced soldiers.
Yes, and a lot of people are getting that skin disease now that has those fibers coming out of it too, that could be transhumanism too.
Yeah, well, everyone's getting turned into transhuman.
Morgellons disease is what it is.
I mean, people who are going to survive, because there's going to be depopulation, I mean, it's already not going to be, it's happening, are going to need to be transhuman.
Now, what do you mean when you speak of etheric assassins?
I don't know, I think we're getting into the realm of kind of possibly religious disinformation, because this program, the IBIS program, was run by the Fourth Reich. They're atheists, and then they believe there's no soul, and when a person's body is destroyed, that's it, they're gone for eternity. But you can keep a physical body alive indefinitely. And when I was involved with the Vatican, starting in 1990, one of the best kept secrets of the Vatican was that the soul was something they'd made up for religious control. So this is why everything's going to like cryonics and life extension and things.
Well, there's a term that a friend of mine who's very big into radionics and chi and things like that, and he said that there's a term called Bueno martial arts. He said it's only heard from word of mouth, but it's a secret and there's no writings about it. It's basically a form of martial arts where you combat people with your mind. It's the ultimate form of martial arts, they say, where it's combat with the mind, like psychic warfare kind of stuff.
Yeah, I had a friend from Nelson in Canada who was involved in the program, and he spent a bit of time in Japan. He said he met a guy from the Japanese Defense Force, I think it's like the Japanese intelligence, and he said the little Japanese guy pinned him up against the wall without touching him, to where he couldn't move.
That also makes me think of when Duncan O'Finian speaks of getting out of the helicopter and joining hands with those children, and all those soldiers went down.
Yeah, it's similar. It's all very physical, that stuff that's connected up with satellite and nanotechnology. We did a similar operation in Africa in the late 80s, where a zombie outbreak that occurred in an African village, and we just basically went down there and just set everyone on fire to contain the outbreak. But that's all connected up with nanotechnology and satellites. Because there's disinformation out there. People are talking about souls being transferred into clones and souls being transferred into avatars and things like that. I mean, from my understanding, I've seen the deepest levels of the programs and the technology. That's not possible because it doesn't seem to be a soul. It seems to be something that's made up for religious control. And it seems to be about trying to extend in the life, trying to stay alive in one body. This is where everything's heading now.
Well, I had a father who was a double amputee, and he still felt pain when his legs were gone, and he still felt his legs when they were gone. So I do believe that the aura and/or soul, whatever you want to call it, lives on.
I think there's
And people that have, and pardon me, near-death experiences. Speak of.
Yeah, I think that could be electrical signals and I don't know, possibly near-death experiences, maybe hallucinations, because they wouldn't. It's gearing towards physical immortality. This is what IBIS was, a life extension program. So if you just died and went somewhere great, there'd be no point trying to extend your life.
Something made me very nervous yesterday when I heard that there was a virus, a vial of potentially they say, deadly virus missing from a Texas laboratory. I was wondering if you knew anything about this. It's supposedly a horrific strain of virus that disappeared from a laboratory in the University of Texas Medical Branch, UTMB, in Galveston, early last week. Officials notified the public as precaution, but the vial was in a locked biohazard freezer when it disappeared, and 1 out of 5 vials disappeared. Do you think this is something that we should be worried about?
That's just the Z virus. That's the zombie virus. There's outbreaks happening all the time.
That's what I was thinking too, because it can produce high fevers, bleeding, disorders, shock, and death, and it's passed on human to human.
The zombie virus is kind of 3 stages. If you get infected with it, you go into a coma, and then.
Is that related to the bath salts episodes that we found?
Yeah, but that wasn't bath salts. That was a zombie outbreak.
Of course, yeah.
There's been a lot of those in Miami over the years. There's been a lot of them in Florida.
Yes.
There was actually an event in 1935, I think it was, in Key Biscayne, the little island in the Florida Keys. I've holidayed on Key Biscayne and been involved in these operations. And
I lived in Miami for 10 years.
What part did you live in?
I lived in North Miami, Aventura. I lived in Fort Lauderdale. I lived in Boca Raton.
So you're familiar with the little bridge that goes to Key Biscayne?
Yes. Yes, I've driven that. It's a beautiful ride. I love that ride.
Yeah, because that's where I stayed quite regularly at Key Biscayne over the recent years. And that's where that zombie event happened, just on the bridge there. Near the bridge, near the traffic lights.
Near Ala Morada.
But I think it was 1935, I have to check my notes, but there was a zombie outbreak on Key Biscayne. They had to contain the whole island. They had to kill 3,500 people on the island.
What year was that?
I think 1935. Because the zombie I think there was a really high-level category storm there. And it destroyed the bridges from Key Biscayne to Miami, so the people got trapped on the island. See, a lot of these zombie outbreaks happen after natural disasters because it's spread from rats and animals like that, and they start infesting the streets after these natural disasters. But the disease actually comes from off-planet insects, interestingly enough. It's the same strain as rabies and Ebola, and it's actually transferred by off-planet insects that actually... and then it comes from like ticks and things like that when it arrives on this planet.
It makes sense that there's a strain of rabies too.
And it affects, rats and cats and dogs. The Great Plague of London, the Great Fire, that was a zombie outbreak.
That's exactly what came to my mind.
That's what they said was started by rats. So basically in 1985 in Key Biscayne, there was one of these storms, and then the rats started roaming around afterwards. Within 24 hours, the first zombies appeared. And people on the island just thought they were dazed hurricane survivors and let them get close to them. They got bitten. And it spread like wildfire across the whole island. People were actually running into the sea away from the zombies to escape from them. Loads of them drowned because the waves were so high from the hurricane.
Yeah, they thought it was like from dehydration or heat exhaust or something like that, I think.
Well, they just thought they were days survivors until they got close to them, and then they got bitten. Like I say, some of the people on the island, when they realised what was going on, they absolutely panicked and run into the sea to get away from them. And a lot of people drowned because the waves are so high.
Wow.
And they sent in teams of soldiers there. I think they sent to the south side of the island, and they set up a beachhead. It took them about 2 weeks to basically kill everyone on the island.
There is a base in the southernmost point in Key West.
Undersea base.
No, there is a military base in the southernmost point of Key West. At least there was when I went there.
Because Patrick's Air Force Base is in Florida, and that's all heavily connected to this. So, I mean, there's been a lot of these outbreaks, and you'll see more and more happening. They're going to come out of the black ghettos, but it's very much there. That's where they're coming from. Black people seem to be more susceptible to it.
I wonder if that's a depopulation thing for their race in general.
I think so. I think it's going to be used, or is being used, because, I mean, zombie outbreaks are hard to contain.
Why don't we take this time to go to our first break, Michael, and then we come back and talk about some of your missions, if you will. So at this time, if that's okay with you, Michael.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool. Okay. Everyone, during our break, please feel free to sign up for our YouTube channel and Facebook page. They're both called Truth Connections. Our first break song is by a band called the Anunnaki. You can find more of their music on SoundCloud, and the song is called Hybrid. Enjoy. We'll see you back in about 4 minutes. We are back, and you are listening to Truth Connections Radio. We have our very special guest, Michael Prince. This is Kathy. Michael, are you with us?
Yes, I am, Kath.
Great. We're very happy you're here. What would you like to talk about next, Michael?
I suppose we can just stick on the subject we were talking about.
Okay.
Fort Sam. I mean, we all got infected with the zombie virus at Fort Sam. But the thing was, because we were, call it enhanced, it binded with us on a molecular level and made us stronger. Because, you see, the zombie or the Z virus it will put you into a coma for 24 hours. And then when you wake up, that's when you have the full infection. But they only actually live for 1 year. That's what we discovered. And within 24 hours, when they wake up, the skin kind of takes on like a silvery leather look, and then it will start falling off the bones. But we were all infected with it. See, but it didn't do that to us. It bonded with us on a molecular level, but it gave us a taste for these things, a taste for blood and a taste for flesh. You know, this is why Jeffrey Dahmer was eating people's brains and things after he came out of Fort Sam, you know?
Does that scare you that you have those tendencies?
I've learned how to control them. I mean, it's kind of a miracle that I'm not homosexual. Well, it's a miracle I'm not a pedophile. But I don't have any sexual cravings or anything for men or children. It's just, I just don't have them.
Right.
But I do have this, I definitely have a bloodlust, without a doubt. And, I mean, the thing with Jeffrey Dahmer is he became a homosexual. And that's where a handler will come in. For everyone goes through homosexual programming. But a handler will come in and try and break you. And if the homosexual handler breaks you, you will usually most end up becoming homosexuals. But in that particular area of the program, I wasn't broken, so I didn't carry that through later life. And I mean, it all gets back to genetic tests. These disease viruses, they can bite through steel. I mean, we've done experiments on them where we severed their spines, and the spines healed within 24 hours, but they were still crawling along, searching for human flesh. And at Dulce, they do, one of their main lines of testing is zombie DNA.
So no matter how wounded they were still needing to feed.
Exactly, and but they can regenerate themselves. I mean, we cut one at Porton Down, the chemical testing labs in England. We severed their spines, and they were healed within 24 hours. So they're using the zombie, the Z virus, for the super soldier programs, but obviously it's going to give you certain side effects, you know. And I mean, I could be classed as a serial killer because my records state that I've taken out over 200 people, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. But,
well, it makes me very nervous about genetic testing, because I didn't have my first child until I was 36, and they scare you to make you think that you're too old and there might be genetic problems, so they gave me an amniocentesis. And I always wonder, since I've learned all this, what they did with that genetic information that they got from her.
So is that where they take the DNA sample from the child?
That's where they put a needle in the pregnant mother's belly,
right,
and draw out DNA.
So they're obviously, because the stem
under X-ray.
I think the stem cells of the babies are highly sought after in the programs.
It makes me wonder what they really wanted it for, really.
Yeah, definitely, because that's what they're using to regenerate. And this is all, not the Nazi program. The swastika was a symbol of regeneration. It was a symbol of Thor's hammer, which was a symbol of regeneration. So they found out these zombies could regenerate, so they weaponized that process.
I was actually thinking of saving her cord too, but you have to rent storage every month or year to save the cord. And I wonder what they do with all those cords from babies that are born too.
Yeah, and then they take away the placenta, don't they? And I think they're highly sought after too in the hospital.
They make up with it all sorts of stuff. Yeah,
they're very highly sought after. So, yeah, I mean, the testing on these things, there's outbreaks all over the world. You can, do different research, check out the internet. There was one guy in New York, it was again another black guy, came from the ghetto, where I think he ate his roommate's brains. And that was quite well publicised. It wasn't as publicised as the guy in Miami. And then there was another guy in China who jumped on some lady's car and started going crazy. And then when she got out of the car, he grabbed her and started eating her face. And like ripped her face off her. She had to have a lot of plastic surgery. So it was similar to the Miami event.
Did it take like 15 cops to get that person off that other person in Miami?
I think so. I heard something like that.
It's an insane amount of force that person had.
There's actually been a leak from the CIA's units, the zombie containment units. They actually have an arm of the government that deals with it, and it was released onto the internet. And they said that they'd put there'd been the outbreaks, and they'd had to put the cover of bath salts into the media to stop panic.
Right.
And then
crazy kids taking drugs. Fear not.
Yeah, they said they're using the cover of synthetic marijuana. They actually used the Kim Kardashian show to push forward the cover story, interestingly enough.
Kim Kardashian, to speak of a little vampirism, Kim Kardashian got her own blood drawn from her, and she had blood facials done on her face recently. Did you hear that?
Yeah, because my wife likes the Kardashians, so that's why I see a lot of this stuff. Yeah, I saw that episode. There was one episode where her and her sister, because they live in Miami, so they drove to the spot where the zombie attack had taken place, and they recreated it, like as a joking scene where Courtney or the other one was saying, "Oh, don't eat my face" and all this, and we're pretending to eat each other. And then they were talking about bath salts. They were saying, "Oh, how could anybody take bath salts?" So they were reinforcing the cover story in the public's mind. Kim Kardashian was given some honorary title, the keys of the city, in Miami, by the mayor or something. And the guy said to her, "Is there anything we can do for you?" And she said, "I've always wanted to ride in the back seat of a police car, and see the programs they're involved in, the arrests and stuff." So they took the camera, and they went to this black ghetto, and there was a black woman had been infected in the early stages of the Z virus, because I recognized it, and she was sitting on the floor, rocking back and forth and moaning. They said, "Oh, this is this new synthetic marijuana." So they were reinforcing it again. They're putting all this stuff down to drugs. But then after this, the CIA zombie units will go in and contain the outbreaks. But for some reason, they're coming from black ghettos because, there's like an African jungle people. And this is a kind of jungle disease, so they're more susceptible to it.
Similar to how HIV got started.
Yeah, well, they have the Ebola.
It was released from a lab as well.
The more powerful version, the Ebola. And then that was obviously put in place to decimate the African population.
And the gay population.
And the gay, well, these are the Nazi undesirables, that they want to reduce those numbers. They believe that the black people descend from, they believe they're originally a white race with gorillas and apes to create the black race. The Nazi ideology says that there was a white race who got stranded on a jungle planet, like unpleasantly hot jungle planet. And all the males died from these types of diseases, and only the females were left. And the females went insane and started to mate with the jungle gorillas and monkeys. And from that, the black race was created. So they believe that they're a genetic mistake. They don't have any place. So the thing is, the plan is to exterminate the whole race.
I find some of the creatures that you speak of seeing at various places, I don't know if it's on planet or off planet, very interesting. Would you like to go into that a little bit?
Well, starting in the 1990s, the so-called werewolf war started. And that's one of the best kept secrets of history. There was a werewolf, for lack of a better word, containment units run by the Vatican. And I was involved in programs in Central America.
Is that the being that you speak of that looks like a wolf but is like a 4 to 6 foot Bigfoot?
I saw him in Malaysia as a child.
Because there has been sightings around, I'm not sure what place that was in, but there's a Bigfoot being spotted around creek beds. They tend to travel in 2 or 3 in groups.
They pop up all over the place.
Right.
I think the plan is to exhibit them in zoos at some point in the future, when the public is being made aware of the werewolf wars, so-called, that happened in the 90s.
And there was also that Oliver case of the chimp that walked and looked like a human, that people were saying that he was basically from a experiment, and he was part human and part chimpanzee hybrid.
Well, that's from the Yerkes Primate Center, I think you're talking about.
Yes, you're exactly right.
That's DARPA's involved in that. But again, it's all race-related. They're trying to, from studying the origins of the black race, they're doing all this monkey and human hybridization, because they believe that the blacks are kind of an intelligent monkey.
And that smaller being that you said you saw was 2 to 3 feet tall I couldn't help but think of the orang pendek. That orang pendek means Indonesian for short person. And they're found in the remote rainforest. It's a humanoid kind of looking 2 to 3 foot tall Bigfoot looking creature.
Well, the earliest time I saw one was in Malaysia, on the island of Penang in 1981. And we trapped one of these creatures, like a 6-foot bipedal wolf, intelligent up in the trees. We trapped that creature. I mean, the so-called werewolf wars in the 90s, I was sent with a unit run by the Vatican and the Jesuits to Central America, to Costa Rica. There's a little place called Limon, I think it's on the west side. It's like a beach area, beach villages, and there's one of the villages had been attacked. They said they'd been attacked by werewolves over several nights, the villages, and we had to evacuate the village. We trapped these beings down into an old underground aircraft hangar, an abandoned one. But it's amazing, in these third world countries, Africa, Central America, in all these little isolated villages, the things that happen there is amazing. There's zombies, werewolves, all these vampire events, and everyone knows about them. But here it's all contained, we're protected in some ways, and then you have little outbreaks here and there, but it's covered up, you give them a cover story.
Yeah, there's also a huge, pig-type body being that is on 4 legs, and it has like a werewolf kind of looking head in England, I forget where, but there's that creature too. In your opinion, are these all multidimensional beings?
I mean, I don't know what multidimensionality is. It seems like almost a nonsense word that nobody understands what it means.
Or could they be called chimeras?
The physical creatures, some of them are shapeshifters. They shapeshift from human to werewolf. But when we were sent to Costa Rica for this operation, we tracked these beings down into this underground shelter, and there was 2 types of werewolves, which type 1s were kind of on the first, or it wasn't really levels, but on the more shallow area, and type 2 werewolves were deeper down in the tunnels. The type 1 is your kind of classic werewolf that you see in films, like the big wolf head that stands on 2 legs. But the type 2s are like big, kind of more Bigfoot, so like big bears with silvery white fur. And the type 2s are a lot more dangerous and vicious. But the type 1s seem to be they were in a lot of cities in America and England in the 90s. There was a few of them in each city, and they were the shapeshifters who could shapeshift between human and werewolf. But a lot of them were homeless because they couldn't really function in society. They were too animalistic. When we went into the underground shelter, the type 1s just ran out of one of the tunnels, but we ended up in a firefight with the type 2s, and we killed the type 2s, but went back to the helicopter, and we had a personal message from the Pope at the time. It was interfacing with us directly because we were working for the Vatican, and they wanted the kind of werewolf race eradicated, exterminated, and they were mostly exterminated in the 90s. They're pretty much an extinct race now, which everybody missed that. It's one of the biggest kept secrets of history, but they planned maybe 1 or 2 survivors to exhibit them in zoos at some point in the future.
I imagine as a new father, Michael, that you've done a lot of soul searching and thinking, and I'm sure you can't even imagine somebody putting their child in harm's way like you were put into now that you're a father. Did you ever discuss that with your father and ask him why, or your adoptive father?
I mean, he died in the same year that I had my memories erased and put into this little tiny fishing village in the middle of nowhere with like 20 years of memories gone. Well, I didn't really have a chance to ask him.
I'm sure it's on your mind.
And I'm not sure what he would have said anyway.
Yeah. You might not have liked what he said.
I mean,
you might have totally disregarded your feelings. He's
very brainwashed. I mean, nobody's really got too many feelings in this area. I mean, the last thing you want to have is feelings when you're having to deal with this stuff. And you just, you do what you got to do, and you don't really do any soul searching or thinking. You find ways to become more ruthless and kind of colder in some ways. You have to survive.
You shut down that kind of feeling, I imagine.
I think we just gone away from the human condition in so many ways because of what we've been exposed to. And I don't know, it's probably a good thing in some ways. I mean, I wouldn't be here now if I was having feeling checks and all this stuff, you know. And this is just the beginning of everything. I'm not, you know, it offends me when people come up to me. It's like especially these sort of well-wishing, do-gooding women and still want to help me and want to save me from the programs. It's like, I say to them, do I look like I need help? Do I seem like I need help? I don't need any help. I'm going to get deeper into the programs and I'm going to do more killing. And that's fine with me.
Why is that fine with you?
Because that's the only way I'm going to survive.
You think they will kill you if you don't work for them?
I have to take the fight to the enemy. If I show any sign of weakness or start slipping, I won't last 24 hours. So I'm just going to have to keep killing to survive. It's just the way it is.
That's heavy.
So, type 1s and type 2s, yeah. So we killed the type 2s and we had a personal message on the intercom from the Pope in the helicopter, and he wanted us to track the type 1s down. And we tracked them down to a city, Costa Rica, and they'd shapeshifted into their human forms. Because the type 2s are just big, savage beasts. They were just in, you know, like a Bigfoot all the time, like a big gorilla. But the type 1s are more intelligent, like so they can shapeshift into human. And there was 2 males and a female woman. Trapped the woman into a bar, sitting there drinking. And my job was to basically go in and drink with her and seduce her and go back to the hotel room with her, which I did. And then we were supposed to become intimate, and for some reason she got angry. And I had the Spear of Destiny, Odin's Spear, which is very effective killing weapon, especially with these type of life forms. And because the metal is kind of toxic to them.
You say the metal was found on one of the moons of Saturn?
That's correct, yeah. A moon called Enceladus. Yeah. And it's what the super soldiers' exoskeletons are made of, or some of the higher class ones. Anyway, getting off the subject. And there was a kind of scuffle, and she shapeshifted into a werewolf form, and I got bitten on the shoulder. And it went out onto the streets, and people saw them. The 2 males appeared. People saw their forms. Now, I think there was reports at the time. It's about 92, 93. Reports in Costa Rica that they've been seen. And that couldn't really be contained. But we neutralized them. But I was bitten and infected with the so-called virus, the lichen virus, whatever you want to call it. So I've been infected by various things over the years. Some things happened where I was possibly turned into one, but they tried to find a cure for me.
Do you think some of these beings could be chimeras that have escaped from some lab?
Yeah, I think some of them are, definitely. Some of them are intelligent kind of aliens from off-planet, like the one in Malaysia when I was a kid. But others are not, they're just like animals, you know. I think some of those are the ones from the labs. And they just live in a forest or whatever, or a cave, and scavenge for food. I think they're the ones you're more probably referring to, those types.
Yeah, and then the Montauk monster that washed up, the couple washed up on the beach.
Yeah.
In I think New Jersey or New York.
Yeah, I heard about that. I think a lot of those things are lab created. Like I say, The werewolf race is pretty much extinct now. There was different types. But I was infected by the disease, but the military tried to weaponize it and harness it. So they were actually trying to create a cybernetic wolf stomach for the soldiers, which was like, it wasn't like a stomach, the organ, flesh and blood, but it was a cybernetic version which DARPA developed of a wolf stomach for a kind of cyborg, you know, and they'd be able to kind of digest huge amounts of food and huge amounts of meat to create the muscle mass that was needed to support the exoskeleton. And DARPA was always heavily interested in creating not a human cyborg, but a human-animal cyborg, which was a cyborg that looked human on the surface, but it had all different animal body parts inside it, but cybernetic versions of them. Some of the reptilians have like claw bones that pop out their knuckles, and they were grafting that type of weaponry onto soldiers.
Lasers in their fingers and such.
Well, I think you can't just put a laser in somebody's arm, but I think they were grafting these reptilian limbs onto soldiers, and the reptilians naturally have 3 bones in the forearms that can pop out like blades. So I think what they were doing was they were removing the middle blade and replacing it with these kind of plasma tubes that there's this kind of laser weaponry that can be harnessed. So I think they're just building on natural things, because you can't just do this thing you can't just start incorporating this technology into people just from scratch, because their bodies will die, they'll reject it. So you have to work on what's there naturally. And when I was at Fort Sam, there was a place called BAMC, Brooks Army Medical Center. It's also known as San Antonio Military Medical Center. And that's where the soldiers from Iraq and Afghanistan will be sent when they get their legs and arms blown off. So we were going there as soldiers, almost every day, and we see the soldiers there with no arms and no legs. But they were experimenting on those soldiers, grafting these limbs onto them after they lose legs. But they're just normal human soldiers. They can't accept those things permanently. If you graft a reptilian limb onto a human, they'll go insane because the DNA isn't compatible. So they were just, experimenting with these soldiers, basically.
Right. That's not cool. It's sort of like how that movie, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the movie, but it was that guy who couldn't walk anymore, came back from war, and he couldn't walk anymore, and when they activated him, he had legs.
I'm not sure if I'm familiar with it.
He evidently went off planet. It was the movie with the blue people. God help me.
Oh, yeah, Avatar.
Yes, Avatar.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Some of that technology is reminiscent of Avatar.
Yeah, kind of. They build the cyborgs over years. You might start off more human and they slowly build you.
Right.
So in the end, you haven't got any organs. You got cybernetic machinery inside your body that has organs. But you might have a wolf stomach, but a cybernetic version of it. So you're placed in a battlefield, and a lot of the problem with the soldiers in battlefield in Iraq and Afghanistan is they get stressed out and they can't eat properly. And once you can't eat, your appetite goes, and you can't sleep, and then you can't concentrate, and you just start falling to pieces. You're no good as a soldier. But if you've got one of these stomachs in you, you're just hungry all the time, and there's like people getting blown up next to you, shot, but you're just looking forward to lunch. So you don't get affected by this, and you've got the bloodlust anyway.
Well, when you've been programmed since a child it's just a normal day of business.
Yeah, you kind of. But those pens, like in the picture that I sent you, in the simulated environment, they'd open a little door and then loads of wolves would come running in. Sometimes friendly ones where we just spend days with them. And then we didn't know much else. We won't have much human contact, so we just thought we were a wolf after a while,
Right.
And then, but then sometimes they'd starve them and send us in. We had to defend ourselves against them. And I don't know exactly that works. You got a 1-year-old defending themselves against a hungry wolf, but they were able to somehow like generate force fields and things and electricity from their body. And then there was all different animals put into the pens. Like in Bases 9, when I talked about Miles, sometimes they'd put us in the smaller pens as babies, and there'd be screens on the outside, and they'd flash. Say George Bush Sr.'s face would appear on the screen and start talking to us. And then he'd transform into a half human, half lizard man. And he was activating that reptile, the reptile flesh in us. It was waking it up. Because we didn't know anything else, so we saw him, and we had his DNA in us anyway. It was very much our father. So we would just think that's normal, so we could do that. And then I remember one baby took a toy off another baby, small child, and then the child was hissing at him in his face.
And you said the Queen Mother was also there, right?
Yeah, but her speciality was wolves.
I have to tell you, it made me really nervous when I heard that, and I'll tell you why. I had the opportunity to try that paranormal Shakti God helmet, it's called, and I tried it, and we talked about it on the show. And one of the visions that came to me, there were these two visions that kept blooping in and out when I had this thing on my head. And one vision was a blue Buddha-looking child, and then it would be replaced by a white wolf, and they would go back and forth, both of those images. So when I heard you say the Queen Mother, did the wolf thing, it kind of made me nervous. I saw that. but it could also be a spirit guide or something too, you know.
It's no joke. I've had information come back to me that women say that I've raped them as a werewolf, me personally. And I know that I got infected with this thing in Costa Rica.
I don't like to hear that you raped somebody. That's not fun.
Well, this is the reports I'm getting back. But I was definitely infected with this thing. But somehow it's been stabilized in me, so I've got control of it now. So whereas my structure is not so unstable. See, a werewolf in the past could be living in a city, say New York, but it could be a guy who's, I don't know, 5'5" and in normal life maybe, I don't know, 160 pounds, 170 pounds, really small and weak. But when he transforms, he's huge and big and powerful. So he's going from one extreme to another. He's going from little, frail and weak to huge and powerful. So what they tried to do with the werewolf virus is stabilize it in between. So you're just powerful all the time, but you're human.
Have you ever heard, Michael, about the couple Iradia? If you look at them on YouTube, you'll see Stuart Swerdlow had them on his show, and there are actually, some people think they're genetically enhanced, some people think they're ETs, some people think they just are, transhuman, and they survive on radioactive materials. But the interesting thing, and why I bring this point up, is when you speak about this force field around the body. Okay, they had Kirlian photography done to them, and around every photo, Michael, there is a violet force field around their body, which I found very interesting.
I've come across similar information where some of the cyborgs, the animal humans, they like radiation and toxins can feed them and make them stronger.
Well, that's what they say, yes. You
mentioned something about these beings feed off radiation.
I'll send you the video later. It's quite fascinating, I have to say.
Well, my understanding was, the water is kind of polluted. It's classed as polluted now. It's supposed to have urine and feces in it and things like that. And they're supposed to be spraying a lot of blood cells and things like that in chemtrails and things.
Chemtrails, in my opinion, are one of our biggest problems.
But I heard some of these beings that we talked about, the super soldiers, all these toxins and things in the water can make them stronger and healthier, so they can survive these harsh environments. Because like dogs eat poop, don't they? And it's sort of healthy for them. For other people, it would be, obviously really toxic. So it's kind of similar along the same lines. This whole animal thing coming into the body.
Well, it's also interesting that you talk about the grays and some of the grays that absorb nutrients from what's around them. And I had a pretty interesting breatharian on the show, full-fledged breatharian. And he does not eat. He absorbs from what is around him. And it's kind of interesting. He was told to do this, in his mind's eye. It's kind of like a knowing that he just got that he needed to do this one day. And he made the steps. And he used to be a rugby player. The guy he's not huge, but he's ripped for his size. So he hasn't shrunken down to nothing. He's got muscle mass and tone. Pretty amazing guy. And basically what he does is absorb from what's around him. And anything he consumes is his own spit.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously I think the grays at Dulce and that, they lie in these baths of nutrients, and I think they're absorbing a lot of hormones from them. I suppose it should be a kind of version of that.
It could be.
I talked about a lot of the crash retrieval operations on the latest Bases videos and things like that.
Feel free to tell the audience all of the Bases episodes that you're in so they can go and do their own homework.
Okay, let me see.
Give Miles a shout out too.
Bases 9 with Miles, Bases 9 with Miles Johnston. Bases number 9, and that was, we went into detail a lot there about the Canadian facility and then later operations. We released some photographs of the first colour photographs of the Dulce facility from a friend that works there. That was featured on that interview. And then Bases 23 did that. I came out of the army a couple of months ago. There was a lot of new information there. And then we did Bases 23 Epilogue, the update that was filmed at the International UFO Congress in Phoenix. And then, I've done a couple of interviews lately and really gone into things that have never been discussed before, or I've never discussed before, which is working for these Vatican units. So talked about that and the werewolf wars, the vampire wars and the zombie wars, which was one of the closest guarded secrets of the Vatican. And so that information leaking out was connected to the new Pope that was sworn in, interestingly enough. I mean, there's been a lot of confirmation about all this stuff. And I got a friend who I was involved in some of the assassinations with in around Chichester and like areas like in London in like 2008. A kind of quite an animalistic guy who've been involved in these programs, and it with MI5 and MI6, it was almost like an initiation. It was again getting on along the serial killer lines, and but this was kind of I'm not going to go into too many details, but it was kind of Jack the Ripper stuff. I mean, he was working, my friend, he had contracts with the British Army and on different bases, and the British Army tried to recruit him, which was just recently actually. There was a couple of officers and then there was one brigadier in particular. And he said, well, I don't want to go through basic training and have to run for miles and all this. He's a bit lazy. He said, my back hurts and things like that. And they said to him, well, you don't have to, because you can join us, and you've already been trained by the military and gone through basic training. And he says, well, what are you talking about? I don't ever remember being in the military. He said, yeah, you've done all the training already, you just don't remember it. Then the brigadier came in and said, you've done a lot of missions for the government. He was saying, well, and you've done it with another individual. And he was saying, you're talking about James Casbolt. And he was like, yeah. And then he says, well, yeah, we remember going into South London and going into one guy's house, and he'd stole a suitcase nuclear weapon. And we basically put a pillowcase over his head and shot him in the face 7 times. And then the brigadier confirmed that. That was actually on file. We were doing this stuff kind of on a weekly basis. I'm not a hero or a role model. It's a lot of people, because everything's backwards, a lot of people consider me evil, and the evil side good, because people don't have an understanding of the world. We're not trying to save people from nuclear explosions, and we're not trying to save people from nuclear terrorists, because, I mean, we did it to secure the suitcase nuke ourselves, because we're still connected to the Hellfire Club, and the Hellfire...
That's a scary place.
The Hellfire Club in England, I mean, was it Benjamin Franklin, the founding father? I think he was a member.
I think so.
Benjamin Franklin, and they're all Satanists. I mean, we are Satanists. I'm a Satanist. Just being real, as you say.
Some people think it's one and the same.
Well, I'm just being real, as you say. And we want nuclear strikes on certain locations, so we're not trying to save people from it. We feel like this has to happen. And then depopulation, we feel like it can't really be stopped, and it has to happen.
Why does it have to happen?
Because the goal is the Fourth Reich to get back to a Garden of Eden-like paradise with very few people. Like a big national park in a way, with a lot of trees and beautiful cities around.
Some people think if consciousness raises, then it could be that way, and they say that one day the animals could possibly coexist alongside of humans, just like they did in supposedly the Garden of Eden.
I think that's the plan. Well, it is the plan. Like tame animals with tame lions walking around, things like that. Kind of similar to what the Jehovah's Witness religion talks about in some ways. It's all heading back to a Garden of Eden-like paradise where people live forever in one body.
But why is that the Third Reich's job? Why can they play God?
Because they don't believe in God. They're atheists. They just believe in survival.
Okay, let me put it another way. What gives them the right to take another human's life?
Because they believe that they're superior and it's survival of the fittest. If there's a more superior race out there, more powerful, then they'll beat them and they'll destroy them, and then that more powerful race will have their paradigm on Earth, whichever that is. But at the moment it appears that they are the superior race, the most powerful, and it appears that their paradigm is happening. And it's like I say, the Garden of Eden, a depopulated planet with, like the polygamy that was instated in the Lebensborn program, where like every man had 5 or 10 wives. That's what they want to go back to, like walking around naked around the forest with every man with 5 or 10 wives.
Right. And
kind of just populate the planet with the Aryan race.
Are you on board with that program?
I mean, it doesn't really matter what I'm on board with. I'm just stating what's happening.
Obviously, you're married.
Yeah.
And is that something you want to do eventually, is to participate in polygamy?
Well, I mean, that's controversial.
Sure.
It's kind of going a bit too personal into my own life and my own
Okay, no problem.
I was made a Mormon priest, an honorary Mormon priest, when I was at Fort Leonard Wood. Interesting. I went through the ritual there, and in the funky white pajamas, the Mormon pajamas, and I was made an honorary, certified Mormon priest, and I was involved in a Mormon assassination unit, which is a very interesting religion. Very interesting religion, very similar to the Jehovah's Witness religion and the Vatican, where the top people running it are atheists. They don't believe in going to heaven or dying or going somewhere else. They believe in life extension, staying alive in one body forever.
I hear they're also hoarding a lot of these patents for free energy technology.
I mean, they're a very powerful organization. Because one of the first things we learned in there, that it's possible I forget the name of it now, but it's where if you're married in the Mormon church, it's possible for you and your wife to be together forever.
That's what they say, that you'll be with them in the afterlife.
But they're not saying, at the higher levels, they're not saying you have to die and go to an afterlife. You can stay alive indefinitely with technology and then just be together. I mean, they're using the life extension technology to try and do this.
Are you still enlisted now? Or when you were enlisted, if you're not enlisted, were you an officer?
No, I was just put in as a private, like lowest of the low.
And what did your training entail?
Well, Fort Leonard Wood, when we first got there, we were given a hell of a lot of injections, and they didn't tell us exactly what it was. And then I was continued to be given injections.
That's scary by itself.
But me, I was picked out with a small number of others to be given additional injections, which they didn't say what it was. I know a lot of my bones got bigger, my muscle mass increased a lot.
Maybe there were some steroids in there, perhaps.
Something like that. Because normally with steroids, you have to inject them like every couple of days or once a week. Maybe these were super long-acting things, because it was like once every couple of months.
I used to get injections in my back under X-ray for pain, for steroids. Maybe it was also to curb your pain as well.
Yeah, they did. It seemed, because I used to suffer from shin splints from running a lot, and it seemed like my shin bones started to be reinforced when I got these injections. I could feel like this almost this like soft putty on my bones, which I could press it in, and then that went away after the injections. It's never come back. Well, I mean, when we first got there, we had the injections, and then we were all loaded into these cattle trucks, and like loads of us in these dark cattle trucks, all crammed in together, and then we're taken to another location, and we all had to like run out with drill sergeants screaming at us and hold our bags above our heads, and people were like screaming and passing out with terror and stuff. And it was just like intense training. They deprived you of sleep and food for 9 weeks.
Wow.
It was just go, go, go. You had to get up at like 3 in the morning, go, go, and start training and running. Big ruck marches with huge backpacks on me up to like march 15 kilometers and things like that. I mean, we did operations, test operations, like training operations, but I think through some of this kind of hypnosis or whatever it is, I think I was involved in some real operations. Like one guy was a Mormon. They were the best soldiers in the unit, in the army apparently, the Mormons. They were really good soldiers. This one guy had like feathers on his back, like around the back of his shoulders. He had like these feathers that were growing out. And he just said he just had them for his whole life. And I remember operations with him, like we were on aircraft and helicopters. And then there was an operation. I thought we were just training, but we were running around this woods with machine guns, the M16s. There was the enemy there. They were out on the back of Humvees with mounted machine guns, and they'd drive past me, shooting at the other soldiers, and I was part of the other soldiers, but I would just relax and they wouldn't be able to see me. They'd drive straight past me and I would just shoot them in the chest. Well, I thought we were using just simulated rounds, like rubber bullets and stuff, but I think they could have been real operations.
Well, there is some video that is turned up on YouTube of a soldier getting out of a tank, basically, and doing a little bit of recon, and then as he's running back to the tank, he starts to become visible again.
Invisible, yeah. I've seen that, yeah.
So they do have technology. I think Harvard or Yale or someone came out with some kind of technology.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, do you have a copy of your DD-214?
What document is that again? You have to remind me. I'm not very good at with paperwork.
That's basically a paper trail for your military service.
Probably somewhere. I've got like a whole bag of papers and things. I haven't even unpacked. Been out of the army since December, and all my army gear's still in bags. They took my ID off me when I left. You have a little cap card, my ID with a picture on it. They took it off me because I wanted to try and keep it.
Of course.
But yeah, they took it off me, which is a shame.
Did you have any different type of insignias on your uniform that you hadn't seen before, or your unit had?
Can't say I did. We just had the standard uniforms.
Now, I know you signed up for 6 years, a six-year tour, or a six-year enlistment, and you left after 6 months, right?
Just under a year.
Why did you decide to do that?
because the plan was always for me to just get 180 days of active duty experience. And once I had the official record, 180 days, I was supposed to leave, then apply for a new job with another organisation.
Did that also help getting citizenship here, or do you have citizenship here?
I haven't got citizenship yet. I'll be getting it next year, but I have to wait to get my citizenship until I can apply for the new job.
Right. Why don't we go to our next break now, since you've agreed to stay for a little longer. It's a nice conversation. You're very chill, and I can't wait to get back to it.
Sounds good, Kath.
All right. The next song is by Bass Fister, and it's featuring Indigo Angel, and it's called Silence Your Mind. You can find more of their music on Reverb Nation and SoundCloud. Enjoy. We'll see you back in about 5 minutes.
Back sweet seconds here.
We are back with our very special guest, Michael Prince. Thank you, Michael, for being here with us. I hope you're enjoying your time as well.
Yes, very much.
Great. Would you tell our listeners what kind of enhancements you have that you know about, if you had any X-rays, that sort of thing?
I'm not sure if it will show up on a standard X-ray. We've got an alloy exoskeleton. I've got weaponry built into both my arms. I think I've got 2 mechanical hearts, one on each side.
Do you feel 2 heartbeats?
My heart feels like it beats down in my stomach.
Wow.
And I think I've got some kind of laser weaponry in my eyes. And I think that this is powered by a lot of chips in my head. I don't think I have a brain as such. I think it's more reinforced alloys and circuitry in there. So if I get a whack on the head, my brain don't get bounced around, I don't get dizzy so much. There's this kind of enhanced stomach with like 2 triangular circuit boards over the top, which kind of act as a liver and kidneys, I think, from my understanding. And there's some implants around my throat which connect directly to the exoskeleton. And I think the exoskeleton needs, like the Spear of Destiny, Odin's spear, is kind of AI technology. It's not really living as such, but there's a awareness there. And the spear actually needs blood for some reason. It feeds or powers up off blood. So the exoskeleton is made from the same alloy, so it needs to be fed blood. So I think there's this circuitry implant around my throat which connected to my teeth, I think, and feeds blood straight from my teeth out to my throat and feeds the exoskeleton what it needs directly. And I think that's what the exoskeleton itself pumps the blood around my body. It's not done with arteries or veins. I think I've just got grown flesh over the top of the exoskeleton. But I don't think there's actually veins or arteries as such in the flesh. I think that's all done from the exoskeleton itself, which is fed blood for this implant.
Could you explain the difference between a MyLab and an MK Ultra? I know a lot of people have a lot of trouble with that.
A MyLab and an MK Ultra. From my understanding, a MyLab is just like soldiers flying around on a craft, kind of kidnapping people and doing what they want to do with them, what they need to do with them. I mean, these days, a lot of the MyLabs are kind of done for fun, whereas you might have a group of male commanders with access to the technology, you know, the mind control, the scopolamine drugs, which is kind of like a super date rape drug in a way, and the TR3s, you know, they spend time on bases. A lot of the MyLabs are kind of done where if they see an attractive woman, they might just use facial recognition software to find out where she lives, and then they just might take her on the craft and have fun with her, and then just put her back in her bed. A lot of the stuff is these days. A lot of it's along those lines now.
Do you think that could be an Archon type of thing too?
I'm not sure what you mean by that, Catherine.
Archons are supposedly a multi-dimensional being who some say that they are quarantined from this planet, but the in they have is that they can reach you in the dream state.
I mean, I don't really even understand what this word means, multi-dimensionality. I mean, nobody can really explain it or draw a picture of it. But
well, I think that there are, personally, this is my own gut feelings about it. You know, I don't go from a sense of fact. I'm a very right brain, thinker, and I'm also a left brain thinker, but I tend to be more right brain when I come from a sense of knowing like that. You know what I mean? I call it a knowing. And I think that there are many different multidimensional beings. There's many different planes. So every kind of ET can't get put in the same multidimensional basket, if you will. It's my little catchphrase for it. I think that there are conjured up beings. They conjure up demons for black rituals and things like that they give them power. So they could be demons masking themselves as ETs, or they could be something from so far away that we don't even know about. It could be a jinn. It could be anything. So what everyone deems as a multidimensional is really an extraterrestrial. It could be a demon. It could be a demon masking itself as an ET. It could be many things. We really don't know until we know is the bottom line, Michael. So I agree with you on that.
I've heard of the jinn.
Have you heard of elementals?
Yeah, I've heard of them, like so-called nature spirits and things. But from my understanding, multi-dimensionality is just one of these new words that is thrown around, but nobody can really explain what it is. Like a soul, nobody can really explain what that is. For me, I deal with reason and physical facts. And I think, to get back to the MyLab point, I don't know about dream state. They're done physically.
Right.
You can physically bring someone through the ceiling onto the ship. It's really easy to do.
Do you think they're doing that to harness their sexual chi?
There's a lot of kind of Crowley and Aleister Crowley sex magic
stuff going on.
Well, you can kind of, again, it's not really, it's physical facts. They use looking glass to look into certain future scenarios. So if they think, one commander, because all the Earth is going to be separated into zones, with each zone is controlled by a commander. So if one commander is supposed to have, 8 wives, they can start selecting them now. They can bring them onto the ship, obviously have sex with them and things, and get the woman to absorb their bodily fluids, and that can kind of put the commander's ownership or his tag on that woman. So if she tries to have a baby with another man in another relationship, she won't be able to get pregnant with him. So it's very physical, things like that. A lot of that's MyLab stuff is going down those lines. So it's definitely done physically, whereas not really dream state, because if you're physically bringing a woman up through the ceiling onto the TL3, it's totally physical, If somebody comes into the room, she won't be there. She won't be in the bed.
Michael, what are your thoughts about martial law and foreign troops in the United States?
There's definitely there's a big Chinese element in the US Army, whereas there's a lot of Chinese dual citizens coming into the Army now. And I think based here down in South Texas, possibly there's Chinese stationed in Mexico getting ready, already coming in, Chinese troops coming up through this area. And I remember one time we were in the Army, one of the sergeants said, everybody who's a dual citizenship of the People's Republic of China has to go and stand over there. And they went and stood over there, and he said, okay, you don't know because you're isolated from the media here. They declared war on America. So he says we're all on a war footing. Afterwards it turned out it was a hoax. The Army had played a hoax on us, like a psychological test. But I'm not so sure if it was so much of a hoax. There's something going on around the border here, which is obviously gearing up for martial law, so-called martial law, but martial law might not be what people think.
Well, I find it very ironic that Hitler did genetic testing on Jewish people. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Didn't he do testing to see if the Jewish race compared to the German race?
Yeah, I think he definitely did testing. There's a British historian, David Irving, who's studied all this, what happened in World War II, the concentration camps for years, and he talks about some interesting things. I'm not sure if it was so many in the so-called Holocaust that the numbers were as high. I think there's definitely a lot of disinformation with the Holocaust there.
It definitely happened.
Yeah, well, not like we're told, because there was a Jewish.
No history is like it's been told to us, you know.
True. There was a Jewish Holocaust against white people in Russia in the early 1900s. The Russian Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution, was also known as the Red Terror, because the Bolsheviks were Jews, and they slaughtered probably over 15 million white people in Russia, Aryans, in the early 1900s. But people aren't taught about that in school. You're only given the Jewish story, because the Jews control the education system, the media in this country.
Mm-hmm. Wait till your baby gets older. You have to say, honey, this is what you need to learn for the test, and this is the real story. I have these conversations with my daughter all the time. And the kids get it, you know what I mean? They really get more than we give them credit for getting. What are your thoughts on Nibiru?
I don't know too much about it, to be honest.
What kind of time traveling have you done, Michael?
I've been where I live in San Antonio. It's a big NSA nest, because the NSA is based in 3 places in America above ground. They're based in Denver, Maryland, and here in San Antonio. And in San Antonio, they're based on Lackland Air Force Base, I think it is, a place called the Medina Annex. And there's underground tube shuttle terminals all over the city that are military bases, underneath courthouses, hospitals. And they take you, the underground tube shuttles take you north to Dallas. And there's a terminal underneath the Bush family ranch in Dallas. Like, this stuff goes on. From there, there's other places in Dallas too. They take you west to Kirtland Air Force Base, to Sandia Labs, which is like connected to Los Alamos Labs, places like that, like Oak Ridge National Labs. So there's these jump rooms at Sandia, and I was involved in operations there to go back and pick people up in different time zones in different countries too. So the jump room there just looks like a room with, you've got obviously 4 walls, and there's 4 screens on each side of the wall, and they project a video footage of where they want to go. So they want to go back to ancient Greece or France in the 17th century. They project the footage of it, and then they make it solid somehow so you can walk through it. But I think it's very hard on the organs, so obviously they need cybernetic soldiers to go through.
That's not the one that you speak that looks like a cannon that's operating on Mercury, is it?
That's different. That's like a gate, like a jump gate, it's almost like a big artifact, like an Egyptian artifact or something. It's like a stone or metal circle, and that will project materials out of it, and then you walk through the gate. But the gates are different to the jump rooms. At Sandia Labs, I was involved in the jump rooms, and we went back, picked up a scientist. We got a picture of my company with him. Looks like Einstein. Probably is Einstein. It's a picture of him photographed with us, and we released it on Basis 23. I'm not sure if you've seen that picture, Catherine.
Yeah, I have. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that was really just... A lot of these operations aren't what you think they are. They're not as technical and as like sci-fi as Hollywood would have you believe. You know, Dulce Base is just like a damp old, run-down base. And the whole thing with the Einstein operation, the jump rooms, was just to settle an argument, really. You know, the Jewish factions in the government, we sat down with them, and it was the Fourth Reich argument. It was like, what really have the Jewish race done for the human race? What makes them so good? There was a name in all these people, you know, these great men. And Einstein's name always came up. Oh, he created this, he invented that. And we heard that a lot of his theories are wrong, and he stole patents and copied other people's work because he was a patent clerk. So they say, no, he's a great man and the Jewish race is great. So we go, okay, we're going to go back. We're going to get him and bring him here. And then he can prove how great he is. And that he didn't steal the patents, and he's a genius mind. So that's what we did. We brought him back, and he couldn't prove it.
I find that cube that you speak about in one of the bases very interesting. That thing that you hold by your belt. I actually looked up what the cube was as an occult symbol, and the cube is Semitic civilizations refer to as the god Saturn, as El, the supreme deity that was represented by the black cube. And the cube, just the cube meaning, the psychology of a cube of space is a multidimensional model that represents the symbol of an emotional consciousness. It's symbolic of emotional consciousness that leaves an imprint on numerology, they say.
It's the cube is connected to Saturn. It's this kind of dark black metal, which I think is the same metal from the spear, which is actually on the exoskeleton, which looks black, but I think it changes color from black to gold sometimes. The cube is connected to Saturn because the Fourth Reich are based in Aldebaran and Saturn. They have a staging post on Saturn. The Fourth Reich also knows the Brotherhood of Saturn, which is actually the Brotherhood of Satan, because Satan is Saturn. There's a book called the Brotherhood of Saturn, Fire and Ice. I forget the name of the author now, but Norse mythology states that the energy of life was created in the gap between fire and ice. Because if you have a massive amount, the technology they're using now is based on this vril energy, which is they're combining intense temperatures of coal with intense temperatures of heat to create a third energy, which is this blue vril energy. So this cube of Saturn harnesses that. And you can't, if you have a massive amount of ice with a massive amount of fire, the question I'd ask you is, will the fire evaporate the ice and destroy the ice? Or will the ice put out the fire? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They're two indestructible elements going against each other. But actually what will happen is a third energy will be created. And this is why Norse mythology says the energy of life is created in the gap between fire and ice. So the technology that is very much being used by the Fourth Reich is this vril, this blue energy, which is in this incredible kind of cold fusion energy. The cube just basically harnesses that. When I was involved in the assassination in South London for the suitcase nuke, we used the cube to control. There was a female-male agent in there. We used them to take control of their bodies. They wouldn't put up resistance to us. So we used the cube there, and it could control bodies. And then we interrogated the woman.
Right.
To where the location of the nuke was, the suitcase nuke.
It really gave me a vibe of when vampires glamour someone.
Yeah. So I think it's connected and similar.
It seems like it might be. What other kind of technology, ancient technology, have you seen? Can you speak about that?
I've seen the spear. I've seen the cube. I've seen at the ritual in Balmoral. It was me and the other individuals that were mentioned on Basis 23. We were all taken to Balmoral Castle on this night, and we were actually weighed in this seat, which is an artifact. It's like a stone seat. And the lightest person on it is empowered with the Spear of Destiny, or Odin's spear. It's not the spear that pierced the side of Christ. And, Hitler wanted the spear, had the spear, and whoever has the spear is said to control the destiny of the planet and can shape nations.
He who can remove this sword from the rock, that kind of thing.
Exactly, yeah, like King Arthur and Excalibur. Like only one person could do it. So they all sat us on this thing, but it actually turned out to be the Stone of Sion. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. SCION, or the Stone of Destiny. It's a famous artifact in England. They use it to coronate kings and queens on. They used it, Queen Elizabeth had it underneath her throne when they coronated her, this block, this stone of Sion, and they took it to Westminster. But then they said its rightful place was in Scotland. So I think some Scottish nationals stole it from Westminster Abbey and transported it back up to Scotland because it's supposed to stay in Scotland. So this artifact, again, they used it for us to weigh us to find out who would be empowered with the spear. There was 5 candidates.
Are you familiar with that black goo that people talk about? Is that in reference to transhumanism?
I think so. I think it's something to do with cyborgs and possibly eating away physical organs and replacing them by these machine body parts. Because supposedly there's a whole science of robotics, and this was this whole movement, transhumanism, AI, is huge. Apparently, the original human form was a cyborg, a white male cyborg, and humans are a devolved version of that, because apparently there were some of these insect invasions which connects all to the zombie viruses and things, and some of these insects actually managed to burrow into the bodies of the cyborgs and eat away these kind of beautiful alloy organs. Everything's in perfect symmetry inside the body, and they laid eggs and things and worms, and that's what the flesh organs are now. Because if you cut a human open, it looks like a mess. It looks like a mess of it looks like worms and eggs and things. Like the intestines and the liver. There's a big chunky piece of meat on the one side, and the heart is on the other side. It's just a big mess. But if you cut a cyborg open, everything is beautiful. Everything is in perfect symmetry inside it, with like gold and a diamond type alloys. So the first human form was a cyborg, and humans have devolved away from that, and now they're coming back towards it. The ones that will survive anyway, the ones that aren't subhuman. What are some of the ways that they monitor you? Do they still monitor you still? I interact with different people, different beings, but it's not as if any of the alien races are that amazingly powerful. The human cyborg form is been proved to have the highest survival dynamics. Those alien races, a lot of them are subhuman. They're answering to us now, and they are trying to get back to the human form. A lot of these alien races that don't look human, they're trying to get back to the human form. It's kind of been decided now that the perfect human form is a white male and white females. So they're trying to get back to that. Kind of like what they did with Michael Jackson. Right. Again, it might sound ridiculous, but Michael Jackson was involved with DARPA, and he was actually a DARPA robot. Oh, I think he was Monarch too. Well, definitely, yeah, without a doubt. But he was a DARPA robot. I mean, it's obvious he was a robot. And they were DARPA experimenting again. They were trying to get black people to see if they could turn them white, and then they were doing that with Michael Jackson. So this is what a lot of these races, I'm talking about the alien races, are trying to get back to this white human form. So you tell the audience some of your gifts, Michael. I know you can see radio waves and radiation from non-ionizing radiation or something like that. I mean, yeah, my eyes are tuned into different things. Do you think they've enhanced your vision with like... Well, that's, again, it's physical. If I'm on the battlefield, I can physically see around corners, and I can see enemy positions miles away. So it's like a computerized display in my field of vision. What do you say to people that don't believe you? I don't really care. I know. It's what I like about you, really. You just think, this is me, and this is what you get. I'm not really trying to put myself out in the public. You're not. You don't have an agenda. You're not selling something. I mean, I refuse most of the interview requests I get, and I refuse. People want me to speak at conferences. I'm not really interested in the whole so-called truth movement and the UFO movement. It's just, to me, it's just full of lies, basically. And if you talked about what was going on, you'd be hated. You'd be called a disinfo agent. You'd be called a fearmonger. You'd be called a racist, a sexist. I know. All the things that I get called. But people have been so conditioned, everything's backwards. If you talk about the high survival dynamics and really good, wholesome things, people have been brainwashed with equal opportunity. Everybody's equal. It's ridiculous. It's not, everybody's not equal. They're superior beings. And you can't really talk about what's going on.
It's certainly not the land of opportunity, because if they don't want you to play on their ball field, you're not going to play on their ball field. That's just the way it is.
But I mean, we've been so conditioned. It's difficult for me to go ahead and just say, my experiences.
I'm sure.
I'm not really. I'm just gonna. I like my private life, really. I'm not really interested in putting myself out there. Because I said to Miles, what, he was questioning me, so I turned it back around. I said, well, why are you doing all this? You're trying to save people. And his reply was like, I'm trying to wake people up and kind of save people. And I said, well, that's very noble of you, but everybody's not going to survive, and you can't save everybody. So I'm not really interested in being a hero.
Some of those symbols, the rune symbols, do they go back to German roots? And I know they probably go back further than that, as far as language goes.
Well, the runes...
The rune Sig.
Sigrid.
In particular. Some call it Sig, some call it Sigal.
Yeah, the double Sig rune, that's the lightning flash of the SS.
Right.
Well, the runes were said to have... Odin was crucified on a tree and had his spear stuck through his side. And he hung there for like a certain amount of days and nights, which obviously they hijacked and put into the Jesus story. But this story was a lot longer before the Jesus story. But anyway, he was said to have come up with the rune symbols while he hung on a tree. And then they could, with them, he could like paralyze people and enhance water and throw it on a soldier before they go to battle, and axes wouldn't pierce their skin. He could make like women belong to him through certain symbols, and it was the exoskeleton. My exoskeleton is engraved with runes, and they light up in certain situations.
You mentioned that there's one person that leads the Illuminati. Who is that one person? Do you know who that one person is?
Well, that's Lucifer. They believe Lucifer is the first being, the first original being, which the first white man. And I mean, a lot of these societies believe that the life on Earth is only 6,000 years old, because of a program called Project Celestial run by the NSA, where they sent a ship back known as the Calliope, and to monitor the first human being. And they found a white man orbiting the Earth on a ship, alone in the ship, suffering from amnesia. And the Earth wasn't terraformed at the time. And he had, in the program, they discovered that it was just a monitor. They sent him back in time for the ship, and they sent them off planet. And on board the ship, like I said, this man was suffering from amnesia and couldn't remember how he got on the ship. There was terraforming equipment, hardware, and genetic equipment. And he began to terraform the Earth, certain areas of the Earth. And apparently this program was only 6,000 years ago. So they're saying life is only 6,000 years old on the Earth. And he created one reptilian being and used that reptilian being to create more life forms. And I think the first humans we created was a group of women. I think it was 4 or 5 female white women. They were kind of experimenting with them. And then they put them down on the planet surface. And this was the whole kind of Adam and Eve, was actually Lilith, which was Adam's first wife. And then from there, those first beings, all beings were created from those original, that small group. Because for instance, with the Pleiadians, like Semyazi, and the different female Pleiadians, you have a lot of them are very old, possibly thousands of years old, but they all look like they're in their mid-30s. So if you have a grandmother who's 8,000 years old, but she gets to the age from 1 to 35 and she doesn't age physically past 35, and she has a baby, a female mother, she gets to 35 and stays there, and then she has a baby, again she gets to 35. Eventually you're going to populate a whole planet with one family, one small group of people. And that's what the Mormon religion talks about. Small families are going to, or have done in the past and will do again, small families will populate whole planets.
Well, they say that they did DNA tests, back on, I don't know how many humans they did it on, and everyone goes back to, so they say, 3 bloodlines. One of them is Genghis Khan, I believe. One of them is someone in Africa. And
well, it appears all life descended on Earth from one white man, but the Jewish system are putting in their propaganda where they're saying that all life, the first person was discovered in Africa, which I think they call a mitochondrial Eve, which was a black woman. So they're reversing it and putting out, they're lying and trying to convince us that we all descend from black people. And,
some people do believe that.
Yeah, some people do, but they're wrong. It's ridiculous. And they're saying that life goes back millions of years old, because if that's the case, everything's impossible to trace because it's just too big and too vast. The answers are really simple and physical. Like, things are so simple, but the Jewish system creates all this nonsense science to confuse you and make things seem complicated. Like, if life on Earth is millions of years old, it's too big, you can't understand it. It's not even worth trying to think about it. But if it's simple, life on Earth is 6,000 years old, created by one white guy, and everyone descended from him, it's easy to trace things. And saying that dinosaurs are millions of years old, it's not true. The white guy that was Lucifer, created the first reptilian male, and he went off planet to Mars and created the reptilian race, dinosaurs and things. So dinosaurs are only 6,000 years old and come from Mars. There was highly intelligent dinosaurs then, and then they came to Earth. But it's not like people are told in the Jewish-controlled science and education systems, because they want to convince people that the black race is really noble, and they want to give people, the Jews have said it themselves in Protocols of Zion and different texts, that they want to bring the blacks from Africa to America and England and give them prestige in areas of like entertainment and sports and things. And on TV, blacks are praised as being great. We have Martin Luther King Day. And it's to give them prestige so they can interbreed with white women. And then, in turn, they will submerge the white race. They'll submerge white blood through mixed racing. And it's a way to exterminate the white race.
I come from the place that I don't think any one human life is more valuable than another. That's just my way of thinking.
I don't know, it's a touchy subject, but
yeah.
It'll all come out. Yeah. Everything's going to be focused on race. Like I said to Miles, all the wars are winding down in the Middle East, and they're de-manning the British and American army. So the world's media is going to be focused on America, and it's going to be all race issues, a race war. Everything is going to be, every issue, race is going to be brought into it now. You have Obama saying, we need to talk about race. So it's really a kind of melting pot getting ready to explode.
Well, I have a nephew. My niece's son is half and half, and he's just a beautiful, smart, amazing little warrior kid. He's just amazing. This kid had a six-pack at 2 years old, okay? and biceps. He's got a green belt by the time he's 7. And he gets straight A's in first grade, the school he goes to. So, as far as that goes, I don't think that's a way of dumbing down a race. I just think he's a beautiful child, and I can't imagine life without him being here.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying. Well, if it comes down to my race surviving or another race, I want my race to survive. I'm loyal to my race. Now, the daughter of my first child, the mother of my first child, is with a black guy. They've had a mixed race baby, and he's strong and good looking and all that, but that's a kind of touchy subject. Whereas there's really going to be a race war starting to brew up. There's programs in America where they're trying to import the black people back to Africa, and a lot of the black people are saying we actually want to go back to Africa, to our roots. So
I can't blame them, really.
Actually saying we don't actually belong here, we never felt comfortable here, we want to go back. And then there's I forget, there's one really big program.
Heck, I don't feel comfortable on Earth. I know that much.
I forget the name of the program, but they're saying they're trying to kind of lure them back to Africa and give them housing and like tax deductions and things like that to make it seem really like that's the thing they want to do. So, but there's the agenda for the extermination of the black race. There's the agenda for the extermination of the white race.
I think there's an extermination just to get the world down to a population. I'm not so sure that it's race. It could be, have some innuendo of race depopulation. But I think I don't know how some of these people who are the puppet masters can sleep at night because their children are sprayed with chemtrails, and how can you isolate something like that?
Because their children have been enhanced for transhumanism. They're getting stronger. The chemtrails, they're getting stronger while the majority of the human race is getting weaker. So it's kind of reversed. Well, you've got two very powerful factions with two powerful agendas. You've got the Fourth Reich, one faction, and it's basically come down to two factions. Everybody's aligned on one side or the other. I mean, the battle lines have been very much drawn. It's very much distinct now. And we've fought hard to get the battle lines drawn. So on one side you got the Fourth Reich, the Nazis, the Aryans, and the other side you got the Jewish Zionists. The Fourth Reich want to see the extermination of the black race, and the Jewish Zionists want to see the extermination of the white race. So somebody is going to have their agenda. It's either going to be one or the two. One of the races is going at some point in the future. That can't be stopped.
Well, I hope it doesn't happen. But if it does, we'll have to deal with it accordingly, I guess. Michael, I have to ask you this question or I wouldn't be responsible as a host. How do you know that your memories are not implanted?
That's a good question. That's a fair question. I can tell the difference between a false memory and a real memory.
Okay.
And then when I have it confirmed by multiple sources, I have it confirmed by file information from people who work in the government who I trust, people I've grown up with, and we're close friends. And, there's video footage sometimes. I get to see video footage. I get to see photographs sometimes. So, that's the answer right there.
Is there anything else you'd like to touch base on? If there's any other topics you think?
I suppose we can cover the Vampire Wars quickly. Okay, the Vampire Wars, this is another one of the best kept secrets of history, the Vatican secret. That took place after the Werewolf Wars. Werewolf Wars took place from 1990 to 2000. Went straight into the Vampire Wars after that from 2000 2010. And interestingly enough, they were all 10-year wars for some reason. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the... Did you ever hear the Nicolas Cage vampire kind of interview where he called into the Art Bell show?
No, I haven't.
Has anyone ever mentioned it to you?
No.
Okay, well, it's on the internet. Nicolas Cage called in to the Art Bell show live on air, didn't say his name, but it was obviously him. He's got a very distinctive voice. And said he was a vampire, a very old, ancient vampire who worked as a government assassin, and talked about some of the kind of details of all that. And then he, just after this, on the heels of that, was released pictures that show, well, they were real pictures. They showed Nicolas Cage back in the Civil War. You familiar with that?
No, I'm not. This is news to me.
Somebody, a guy got hold of the picture from some archives. So when was the Civil War? It was, what, 1800s? What was it? What year? You're American, so you probably know.
God, I hate history. It was all bullshit anyway, so...
1800s Civil War, yeah, whatever, 1800s. They basically showed a picture of Nicolas Cage back in the Civil War. And some guy had the picture and was trying to sell it for like $1 million or something. But it wasn't time travel. He actually was a vampire. He was alive back then. And there was a picture of him from all that time ago. And a lot of the listeners will be familiar with this. It was a big story, both the Art Bell thing and the Nicolas Cage picture. But he came to St. Ives in Cornwall, where I lived, and visited the Tate Gallery, which is where my mother works there, my adopted mother. And the trip was publicised. He'd come to this little tiny fishing village in the middle of nowhere where I was put. I actually met him there, and he wanted me to intervene in the vampire wars because there was different vampire clans battling against each other. I was involved in the vampire wars for years, from 2000 to 2010. The hit in London with the guy with the cube, with the suitcase nuke, that was part of the vampire wars. Nicolas Cage told me that he would supply me a bioweapon he said it would enforce my reign on the planet if I would intervene in the vampire wars.
He told you this?
He told me this, and it was, him and the other group came good on their word, and they weaponized my blood, and they're spraying it in chemtrails, my blood and my DNA. People are breathing it in.
Do you think Nicolas Cage is MK?
Well, he's more than MK, but yeah. The name Cage, they put two twins, in a cage together and have to fight out to the death with a sword. So they supplied me this weapon, and now they're spraying my blood in chemtrails across the planet.
And that's for the Vampire Wars?
The Vampire Wars finished in 2010. Most of that race was extinct after the wars. Only the leadership of the vampires survived, but they became us. They became ascended machine technology.
What do you think is going on in the Ozarks? I know you spent some time there.
Well, that's why I went to basic training. There's a major underground base there. I think it's like Ozzy's Ark, like Sean Stone said in Conspiracy Theory. Mm-hmm. Center of the country. The Mormons said, they think it's they called it the New Jerusalem, the Ark at the center of the country. I know a lot of rich people are going there and buying property. So, have the huge forest there. We did a lot of training in that forest.
Well, there's a lot of underground bases and underground tunnel systems that connect to everything else.
Yeah.
What do you think that their main purpose is to have these bunkers?
Well, we're getting into the Z Wars now. They started in 2010, the zombie wars. But this won't be a war you can contain like the vampire and werewolf wars.
And that's tied into the said zombie apocalypse, so to speak?
I can't see into the future. I don't know what's going to happen. All I know is what's happening now.
Right.
There's outbreaks coming from the ghettos. So you're obviously going to need a place to hide. Or they're putting it as a reserve if they need to go underground.
Have you ever heard of the drug? I know you speak of the drug scopolamine. Did I say that correctly?
Scopolamine.
Scopolamine. Have you ever heard of the drug adrenochrome?
Yeah, I think that's connected to the vampires too.
Supposedly it's taken via needle out of the back of the neck of someone when they are basically sacrificed. And when you die and you're in a heightened state of fear, your brain, I guess, produces that chemical. What would the vampires want to do with that?
Well, Dulce, pretty much their main line of research is they do a lot of testing with vampire and zombie DNA, like it's already been mentioned. But they're putting these life extension technologies into the civilian world, where you have all these anti-aging clinics popping up all over the place. And they're going to sell you for the right price, very expensive. They're going to sell you human growth hormones, and testosterones and things like that. But all that is vampire DNA. You know, you're going to inject that into your body, and your fat is going to go away, and your muscle mass is going to increase. Your skin will look younger.
It is also supposedly gives them a high like no other if they take it themselves.
Yeah. So all these things, because all these things are being harvested from people. People have very much always been a food source and continue to be to this day. They're definitely harvesting a lot of these hormones. Even human growth hormone itself used to be harvested from cadavers, but it was too expensive to do that. They harvest it directly from the pituitary gland. But now they make it synthetically, or so they say. Well, I don't know. I think they're still harvesting it from body. But that's what they're going to sell you in anti-aging clinics. I mean, you must have seen them advertised all over the place.
Yeah, luckily I've never had any kind of enhancements whatsoever, so I don't have to worry about stuff like that.
But a lot of people are going for it, and yeah, they charge you a lot of money. It's almost like $2,000 a month. But you're basically putting vampire DNA into yourself.
Wow. I'm glad I'm too broke to afford it.
Yeah.
Michael, besides this sexual abuse that you suffered, what is one of the most horrific tortures, I guess you'd say, that you remember from your memory?
It's an interesting question. I don't get hit with that one very much. They do something where they cut into the left side of your groin. That hurts a lot.
What were they doing that for?
I think some nerves there or something. But then they're doing a lot of this kind of, like the S&M bondage stuff, where you get needles put through all your genitalia and your lips and stuff. But most people, they start to enjoy that stuff after they're exposed to it, so it's not a torture anymore. But they use a lot of that S&M stuff.
Do you have scars from any of that?
I got scars all over my body. Other stuff. Well, I mean, some of the stuff is psychological, where they trap you, where you feel like you can't get out. They might bury you in a coffin with snakes for
wow,
long time, maybe weeks sometimes. But because you keep regenerating and you can't starve, you're just trapped down there. So, but then after a while, you just kind of switch off, and then that's not really a torture anymore. So you have to find a new one. Yeah, I mean, burying with the snakes. That's like psychological, though, because you think they might not ever let you out. You know?
Well, this has been one interesting show, and we can't please everybody, Michael. So I'm not going to try. I mean, your truth is your truth, and people can take it for what it's worth, and go back to the bases and do their own investigation, and come to whatever conclusions they're going to come to.
Yeah, well, there's not all different types of truth. There's only one truth, and that's the dominant, superior paradigm. So that's the thing that's going to play out.
I want to thank you very much for being with us tonight, and I wish you many blessings, you and your wife and your new baby. Thank you very much for taking the time to be with us.
Okay, thank you for having me on, Catherine.
You're very welcome, Michael. Thank you. Have a great night.
Good night.
Okay, everyone, on behalf of myself, Tamara, and the entire Truth Connections team, thank you very much for being here. Until next time, be good to each other. Peace.
Hi everyone, Tamara here. Just a reminder that you can connect with us through Facebook, as well as subscribing to us on our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/truthconnection. We'd love you to join us during live shows at blogtalkradio.com/truthconnections. And for information on upcoming shows, visit our website at truthconnections.wordpress.com. Thank you for your support, and never forget that the truth is reality. and the connection is you.